Have you ever witnessed a moment when everything seems calm until it isn't? Where something as innocent as a park bench becomes a stage for a silent war between chaos and control. Before we dive in, I want to know, what country are you watching this from, and what time is it right now? Drop it in the comments below. And if you've ever seen someone stand up, not with violence but with pure discipline, then hit that subscribe button, because this story is going to stay with you. Now, imagine this. It's a breezy Saturday evening in Fairfield, Connecticut. The kind of evening where parents cheer on the sidelines of a soccer field. Kids chase each other across grassy patches, and the air smells faintly of fresh-cut grass and ice cream from a nearby truck. But under a tall oak tree on the park's edge sits a boy who doesn't quite fit in with the scene around him. He's not playing. He's not scrolling his phone. He's not chatting with friends. He's sitting alone, wearing a fitted black suit with a crisp white shirt and perfectly polished shoes. Completely still, almost too still. His name is Kai Walker. He's 16, and he's waiting for someone. Kai's younger brother Eli is finishing up soccer practice just across the field. Their mom had asked Kai to wait and walk him home. Something simple, something routine. Kai agreed he always does, but Kai doesn't do simple the way most kids do. While others lounge in hoodies and sneakers, Kai sits like he's attending a silent ceremony, flipping slowly through a worn book of Eastern philosophy he borrowed from the school library. His posture is perfect, his breathing slow. To a stranger, he might seem out of place, maybe even out of time, but for Kai, this stillness is a choice, every breath, every gesture carefully measured, because Kai has learned something. Most 16-year-olds haven't. Control is more powerful than chaos. That lesson is about to be tested. The sound arrives like distant thunder, low mechanical approaching. Most people in the park ignore it, just motorcycles, probably a group passing through, but Kai's ears sharpen. His eyes glance upward just slightly. The rumble gets louder, closer, until 5 motorcycles come into view, gliding down the park's main path like predators on parade. They aren't here to ride through. They stop. One by one, the bikes are parked just off the gravel loop beside the soccer field. 5 men dismount, their boots hitting the ground with slow, deliberate weight. They're dressed in leather jackets, dark jeans, and mirrored sunglasses that hide their expressions but not their intent. Their leader, a bulky man with a shaved head and neck tattoos creeping above his collar, walks ahead of the others like he owns the ground he steps on. His name, though we don't know it yet, is Rex Slade. Families glance up mildly uneasy but quickly return their focus to their kids. The bikers aren't breaking any laws, not yet, but they don't blend in, and they don't want to. Rex scans the park. His gaze sliding over the benches, the playground, the families scattered across the grass, then his eyes lock onto Kai. The others follow his line of sight. Something about Kai, his stillness, his appearance, his complete lack of reaction, draws them in like a magnet. Rex nudges one of his men and starts walking. Kai notices. He always notices. He doesn't panic. He doesn't shift. He doesn't even close his book, but inside his muscles tense, not from fear, but from preparation. He recognizes what's coming, not a random encounter, but a challenge, a test. The footsteps draw closer. Gravel crunches beneath heavy boots. Kai's heartbeat remains steady. He can hear his mother's voice in his mind. Never let them see you sweat, so he doesn't. He dog-ears. The page sets the book down beside him and lifts his gaze just as Rex stops a few feet in front of him. "What are you doing here, kid?" Rex's voice is coarse, intentionally loud. Kai looks up, eyebrows raised, calm. "Waiting for my brother." Rex smirks, glancing back at his crew, who are already forming a loose semicircle. "Doesn't look like your kind of place." Kai's jaw tightens slightly, but he stays polite. It's a public park. The smirk fades. Rex takes a step closer. "Smart mouth, huh?" Now they're in Kai's space. The other two, Bruno, a stocky guy with a crooked nose, and Tank, a mountain of muscle with a shaved head and cracked knuckles, move to either side. People are still nearby. Soccer, parents, joggers, toddlers, and strollers, but none of them are looking here, not yet. The bikers chose their timing well. The game is ending. Distraction is everywhere. And no one expects a conflict to start under a tree. Kai's eyes flick to the field. Eli is still on the sidelines collecting his water bottle. "Good, still safe. I don't want trouble," Kai says his tone. Even not submissive. "I'm just here for my brother Rex," leans in close enough that Kai can smell the tobacco on his breath. Who said anything about trouble? For a split second, the world holds its breath. The wind rustles the leaves above. A toddler squeals in the distance. A soccer ball thumps against a goalpost. Then Rex grins. "Maybe you should show us what you've got." Kai doesn't move, doesn't flinch, doesn't blink. But his fingers shift just slightly, resting loosely on his knees. Not clenched, not defensive, ready. Because Kai Walker doesn't fight for pride. He fights only when there's no other way. And right now, the way is narrowing fast. Rex Slade's grin didn't fade, but something in his posture changed. His weight shifted forward. His chest subtly puffed the way predators do when they smell hesitation. But Kai Walker didn't move. His body remained grounded, centered like he had roots planted beneath the dirt. His breath moved steadily in and out through his nose. His eyes tracked Rex not with fear, but with clarity. Still, the tension in the air was beginning to coil like a wire stretched too far. Bruno and Tank fanned out further, their boots scraping against the gravel, casting long shadows under the fading sun. One had cracked knuckles. The other flexed his fingers like he was already imagining how it would feel to strike. Rex cocked his head, studying Kai like a strange puzzle he couldn't figure out. "What's the matter?" he asked, voice low and taunting. "You scared, kid?" Kai didn't answer. He didn't need to. Fear wasn't the issue. Time was. His eyes flicked once more toward the soccer field. Eli had finished practice and was now walking along the edge, towel around his shoulders, talking to one of the coaches. He hadn't seen what was happening yet, but he would. Soon, and Kai didn't want him anywhere near this. Rex took another step, close now. Too close, the kind of proximity that dares a reaction. Kai stayed still, but he shifted his foot slightly, aligning his stance beneath him. Weight balanced. Mind ready. "Come on," Rex said, voice rising half a notch. "Don't tell me you're one of those polite kids who thinks they're too good to fight." Still nothing from Kai. Just that level gaze, quiet, unmoved, and unsettling, for a man like Rex used to getting reactions that silence was like a slap to the ego. He chuckled, a hollow sound. "Maybe he's mute," he said to Bruno, who snorted. "Or maybe he just needs the right push," Tank added, cracking his knuckles with deliberate force. But before anyone could make that push, a voice cut through the tension. "Leave him alone." The words came fast, high-pitched, trembling slightly but loud enough to slice the air like a knife. All three men turned. Standing 10 feet away, fists clenched at his sides, was Eli Walker. Barely 10 years old, still flushed from running on the field. Sweat glistening at his temple, his eyes wide with anger and fear. Kai's stomach dropped, not because of fears for himself, but because Eli was now in the line of sight. Kai's voice cut through sharp and commanding. "Eli, stay back." But it was too late. The attention had shifted. Tank grinned, stepping in Eli's direction. "This your brother?" he asked, tilting his head toward the boy. "Cute kid. Maybe we should teach you both a lesson." Rex laughed softly, low and mean. "Little heroes run in the family, huh?" Kai stood up, no longer. Just seated, no longer passive. He rose like a statue taking life, slow, calm, and full of intent. The moment his feet planted the air around him changed. Even Rex sensed it. "Don't touch him," Kai said, his voice carrying across the short distance like thunder cloaked in velvet. It wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. The tone was enough. Tank paused. Bruno took a half-step back without realizing. Rex didn't move, but his smirk faltered. "Look at this guy," he muttered, almost amused. "You think you're tough, huh? You think this is a movie." The others chuckled, but not as hard, not as sure of themselves. Kai's expression didn't change. His hands hung relaxed at his sides. His body language still looked harmless to someone untrained, but anyone who knew combat would see the subtle, coiled tension, the precision in every breath. "You don't want to do this," Kai said again, his voice deliberate, almost like a warning whispered before a storm. But the warning wasn't taken. Rex sneered, stepping forward, raising a hand with the clear intention of shoving the kid back down. That was the trigger. Kai moved. Not wildly, not aggressively. Just fast. Controlled. Clinical. He pivoted his shoulder, turned his body slightly and redirected the oncoming shove with the back of his palm, catching Rex's wrist mid-motion and pushing it outward in a twisting motion that forced Rex's balance off-center. The biker stumbled, startled, and Kai stepped back into his position. "Still calm, still steady," I said. "Walk away," Kai repeated this time, quieter. Deadlier. Rex growled in frustration, rubbing his wrist as if the brief contact had burned him. He didn't speak. He didn't have time. Bruno lunged, swinging a wide, untrained punch. Kai ducked under it easily, spinning his body and sweeping his leg into Bruno's knee. The man dropped with a grunt, clutching his leg in pain. Tank roared and charged muscles, rippling arms, swinging. Kai sidestepped like wind around a rock and landed a precise, snapping kick into Tank's side directly into the ribs. The sound was audible. Tank staggered backward, gasping. By now, people had noticed phones were raised. A crowd was gathering, but Kai didn't hear them. His world was narrowed, focused. Rex had recovered, red-faced, furious, embarrassed. He charged this time, fists flying. A flurry of rage. But Kai didn't meet rage with rage. He met it with stillness and skill. He dodged 1, 2, 3 swings, then delivered a perfectly timed open palm strike to Rex's solar plexus, forcing the air from his lungs. The big man buckled, coughing violently. Silence fell over the park. Even the kids on the soccer field had stopped, all eyes on the tall teen in the suit. All eyes on the boy who hadn't thrown a single wild punch, but who stood as the last one upright. Kai's breath was steady. His eyes burned with clarity, but there was no triumph in his face, no gloating, no smile, only resolve. "Enough," he said, voice ringing out across the grass. "I don't want to hurt you, but I will protect my brother." The words cut through the silence. Rex looked up from his knees, hate and humiliation twisting in his face. He looked at Bruno, who was still on the ground. At Tank, who was wheezing and leaning against a bike. Then he stood unsteady but stubborn. "Let's go," he snarled to his men. "This ain't over, kid," he snapped at Kai, pointing a thick finger in his direction. But Kai didn't move, didn't flinch, and he didn't look away, not until the motorcycles roared back to life and vanished into the trees. Eli ran to his brother, eyes wide. "Kai, are you okay?" he breathed. Kai put a hand on his shoulder, nodding. "I'm fine," he said. But in his mind a single thought lingered. This was only the beginning. The silence that followed the departure of the motorcycles was almost surreal, like the park itself was holding its breath, unsure how to process what had just unfolded. The sound of revving engines faded into the distance, replaced by the murmur of voices, the rustle of leaves, and the buzz of a dozen phones recording or replaying the confrontation. Kai Walker stood still in the middle of it all, not as a victor seeking applause but as a sentinel, ensuring his brother was safe. His chest rose and fell slowly. Every muscle in his body remained alert, not because he expected another attack, but because experience had taught him something most people never learned. Just because it's over doesn't mean it's done. He turned to Eli, who was still staring at him as if seeing his brother for the first time. Eli's small face was a mixture of awe, confusion, and lingering fear. His voice came out like a whisper through dry lips. "Kai, how did you do that?" They were huge. Kai's gaze softened, and he lowered himself to one knee to meet his brother eye to eye. "It's not about being bigger, Eli," he said gently. "It's about being ready, staying calm, knowing when to move and when not to." Eli blinked, absorbing the words like sunlight through fog. "But they could have hurt you." Kai nodded, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. They didn't, he said simply. Because I didn't give them the chance, and I didn't let fear make my decisions for me. The words settled into Eli's mind unspoken but powerful. Nearby, a few parents approached cautiously, one offering a quiet thank you, another shaking Kai's hand with a look of visible gratitude. Someone else handed him a bottle of water and murmured, "We got it all on camera. You handled that like a pro." Kai accepted the water with a nod but said nothing. This wasn't a moment for attention. It was a moment for reflection. As he and Eli began walking home, the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the pavement. The earlier adrenaline slowly began to wear off, replaced with a different kind of weight, the realization of what could have gone wrong. They walked in silence for several blocks, the kind of silence only brothers share after something they both understand but don't know how to say aloud. Kai's suit jacket flapped slightly with the evening breeze. Eli kept sneaking glances at him, trying to reconcile the brother who walked him to school and helped with math homework with the one who just took down 3 grown men without breaking a sweat. Finally, unable to hold it in, Eli asked the question that had been swirling in his mind since it all happened. "Did you always know how to fight like that?" Kai didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the road ahead. "I've been training since I was your age," he said at last. "Karate, jujitsu, self-defense. But that's not really the point." Eli frowned. "Then what is the point?" Kai looked at him, then really looked. "The point is knowing when not to use it," he said quietly. "What you saw back there, that wasn't about fighting. That was about standing up for you, for myself. But if I could have walked away without it coming to that, I would have." Eli kicked a pebble on the sidewalk. "But you didn't start it." "No," Kai agreed. "But I had to end it." They turned the final corner toward home. The streetlights were just beginning to flicker on, casting gold halos on the cracked pavement. Their house sat at the end of the block, modest, tidy, and glowing with warm light from the porch. And there, on that porch, stood their mother, Maria. Walker had her arms crossed, lips pursed, worry drawn across every line of her face. She didn't move as they approached, didn't wave, didn't call out. She waited. When they reached the steps, she spoke first. "You're late." 3 words, simple, steady, and filled with a mother's knowing weight. Kai opened his mouth, then paused, choosing his next words carefully. "There was something at the park. He said I didn't want to get into it there." Her eyes scanned both of them. Eli stood behind Kai like a shadow, his body language uncertain. Maria's gaze lingered on Kai. "Are you hurt?" "No," Kai said. "Neither of us are." He told her everything brief but honest. The bikers, the confrontation, the choices, the warning at the end. He didn't dramatize, he didn't downplay. Just the truth. When he finished, she was quiet for a long time. Her arms slowly dropped to her sides, then she stepped forward and hugged him tight. Long grounding. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "But promise me something." "Kai, don't go looking for chances to prove your strength. Real strength is knowing you don't need to prove it." He nodded into her shoulder. "I didn't want to fight. I just didn't want to run." Maria leaned back and looked him in the eyes. "Good. That's how I raised you. But be careful. Sometimes doing the right thing still puts a target on your back." Later that night, after dinner and dishes, and a quiet moment of watching cartoons with Eli, Kai lay awake in his room. The moonlight filtered through the blinds, striping the walls with silver. He replayed everything in his mind, the looks in the biker's eyes the moment he stood the strike to the solar plexus, the ripple of people watching the silence that followed, and most of all, the last thing Rex said. "This ain't over, kid." Kai knew those words weren't empty. Men like Rex didn't take humiliation well, and men like him didn't walk away without plotting something worse. But despite that, Kai didn't feel fear. He felt awareness. Focus, purpose. He reached for the book he'd brought to the park, its spine cracked its pages, dog-eared. He flipped to the section he'd been reading before everything changed. A passage from Musashi. The ultimate aim of martial arts is not having to use them. Kai closed the book and placed it gently on his nightstand. Then he turned out the light. He was ready, not just to defend, but to choose. And sometimes choosing peace takes more strength than striking first. The next morning, Fairfield felt different. The air still carried the scent of dew and distant lilacs, and the sky still stretched open in pale blue softness, but something had shifted, subtle yet undeniable. It started with glances as Kai Walker walked Eli to school. The usual rhythm of their neighborhood greeted them with a new kind of energy. Parents at the crosswalks nodded at him with something behind their smiles. Recognition, curiosity, quiet, respect. A crossing guard paused mid-wave to give him a thumbs up. Even the barista at the corner cafe, who usually didn't look up from the espresso machine, caught his eye and said, "You're that kid, right? From the park." The video had gone viral overnight. What started as a shaky smartphone clip had exploded across social media. Teen in suit defends. Little brother from bikers with calm and precision. The headline read on a dozen local reposts. People weren't just impressed, they were captivated. Kai hadn't planned to be a symbol, but now people were treating him like one. And it didn't sit entirely right with him. He didn't want to be known for violence, even controlled, justified violence. He wanted people to understand the restraint, the principle, the discipline behind it, but that part, that was harder to viral. By the time he got to school, the murmurs had caught up to him. Teachers eyed him with guarded admiration. Some students gave him high fives in the hallway. Others stared at him like he was a walking myth. A few whispered when he passed by, not unkindly, but with that strange fascination people reserve for someone they've only seen through a screen. Kai kept his shoulders straight, his face unreadable. He answered politely, but he didn't gloat. He didn't repeat the story. He didn't lean into the fame. Because deep down he knew the most important parts weren't caught on camera the way Eli had frozen in fear. The precision it took to act without escalating the storm brewing in Rex Slade's final words. No one saw the mental calculus. They only saw the ending. And that Kai thought was the danger. During lunch, a guidance counselor pulled him aside not because he was in trouble, but because the district had received over 100 emails from parents praising his composure and asking if he'd consider speaking at the upcoming youth safety seminar. Kai blinked, surprised. "Speak," he echoed. "About what?" The counselor smiled, about how to stay calm in chaos. How to stand up for yourself. You made a real impact, Kai. That word, again. Impact? Kai nodded slowly. "I'll think about it," he said, but part of him knew saying nothing could be louder than saying the wrong thing. That evening, as he walked Eli home again, he saw the changes ripple outward. A neighbor he barely knew offered a wave and said, "Hey, thanks for keeping the park safe." Another man, older, gruff, stood on his porch and simply gave a solemn nod. These people had watched the same footage, but they all saw something different. Some saw a fighter, others saw a protector. Some saw a young man standing against intimidation. But Kai wondered how many of them saw what he did. A moment where not reacting violently had taken more strength than any punch. At dinner, Maria Walker set down her fork. Eyes focused on her son. "You've handled all this attention well," she said. "But, it won't all be good, right?" Kai nodded. "I know." She reached into a drawer and pulled out a letter in a plain envelope. No return address. Inside a single typed sentence. "We know where you live." Kai stared at it, the words chilling not for their drama but their intent. "It was in the mailbox," his mother said calmly. "No, stamp." Hand delivered. Eli's face paled, and Kai instinctively reached for his hand under the table. "He's trying to rattle us," Kai said, voice firm. "Trying to make us doubt ourselves." Maria looked at her son with a mother's fierce steadiness. "You don't get to be brave once, Kai. You have to decide every time how you'll show up in the face of fear." That night, Kai sat in his room. The envelope on his desk, the words echoing like a drumbeat. He could report it. He could let fear guide the next move, or he could choose to lead by example again. The next morning, he returned to the park, not for revenge, not to provoke, but to reclaim the space he brought Eli just as before, and they sat on the same bench under the same tree. He opened his book, the spine creaking softly. For 20 minutes, nothing happened. Then a small group of middle school boys walked past, slowing down when they recognized him. One hesitated, then approached. "You're Kai, right?" he asked. "From the video." Kai looked up. "Yeah." The boy hesitated, then said something unexpected. "You didn't even look scared." Kai closed the book. "I was," he said honestly. "Being scared is okay. It just doesn't get to decide what you do." The boy nodded, and his friends followed him, whispering to each other. Minutes later, a woman with a stroller stopped nearby. "I saw the footage," she said softly. "I bring my daughter here every Saturday." "Thank you." Kai gave a quiet nod. This was why he came back, not to be seen, but to remind himself that fear doesn't own public spaces and bullies don't get to redefine peace. Still, as the wind shifted and the late sun slid behind the trees, Kai knew the letter wasn't a bluff. Rex Slade was still out there, and bruised egos don't heal quietly. The power of restraint wasn't just in that single moment under the oak, it was in every choice that followed. Restraint meant coming back to the place where you were threatened, not to dominate, but to reassert your right to exist peacefully. Restraint meant holding your ground without throwing fists. It meant letting people see you calm when they expect you to tremble. That night, as Maria locked the doors and Eli curled into his blanket without asking questions, Kai stood in the hallway a little longer than usual. Watching, listening, thinking. He wasn't waiting for danger, he was preparing for it, because standing once was bravery, but standing again, that was purpose. And Kai Walker had already chosen what kind of man he wanted to become. It began the way storms always do, not with lightning, but with a silence too perfect to trust. It was Friday evening, exactly 6 days. Since the incident at the park, Fairfield was winding down golden hour light, casting soft shadows through the trees, the air thick with the smell of fresh mulch and backyard barbecue. Inside the Walker house, things were quiet. Maria hummed in the kitchen while Eli finished his homework at the table. Kai was upstairs, seated cross-legged on his bedroom floor, eyes closed, breath slow, meditating. Not to escape, but to sharpen. Every evening since the note had arrived, he'd followed the same routine. No panic, no dramatics. Just focus, because when trouble returned and he knew it would test more than just his reflexes, it would test everything. And then the doorbell rang. 3 short chimes. Too quick, too confident. Maria looked up, already uneasy. Kai was halfway down the stairs before she could call his name. He opened the front door slowly. No one was on the porch, but parked on the curb across the street was a matte black motorcycle, and leaning against it, arms crossed like nothing had changed, was Rex Slade. The same leather jacket, the same shaved head. But this time, no Bruno. No tank. Just Rex, and a look in his eyes that made Kai's skin tighten with clarity. The predator had returned. But this wasn't a brawl in a public park. This was a message. Kai stepped outside, closing the door behind him. He walked to the sidewalk, measured, relaxed, calm. The kind of calm you can't fake. Rex didn't move until Kai stood a few feet away. "You've been busy, huh?" Rex said. Voice low, eyes scanning Kai like a threat he still couldn't quite understand. "Whole town's talking. You're a regular hero now." Kai didn't react. "Why are you here?" Rex smirked. "Thought I'd return the favor. You embarrassed me, kid, in front of my boys, in front of everyone. And now I hear you've been talking at schools teaching kids how to handle guys like me." Kai shook his head. "I didn't say your name. I didn't need to." Rex stepped forward, his boots scraping the curb. "You think you're special? Just because you know a few fancy moves?" Kai's voice was steady. "No, I think I'm someone who doesn't back down from what's right, even if it means facing someone like you. Again." For a moment, Rex said nothing, just looked at him. Then he laughed. But it wasn't real laughter. It was the kind of sound people make when they don't know what else to do with their anger. "You know what, I realized," he said. "You don't fight angry. You fight like it's a job, like it's a duty." He took a step closer. "Let's see what happens when that calm cracks." His hand reached behind his jacket, and for a second, just a second, Kai saw the gleam of a metal object, a knife, not drawn, not brandished, just shown, a signal, a test. Kai didn't flinch. "You pull that," he said softly, "and everything changes. Not just for me, for you," Rex sneered. "What are you gonna do?" "Call the cops?" "No," Kai said. "I'm going to let you choose. Right here, right now. Walk away and prove that even you know where the line is. Or cross it and watch the world find out exactly who you really are." The air between them went still. The trees didn't move, even the wind seemed to hold back. Inside the house, Eli pressed his face to the window watching. And then across the street, neighbors began to emerge. A father carrying a toddler stepped onto his porch. A woman, walking her dog, paused at the corner. One by one, eyes turned, phones lifted, people began recording, not with panic, but with quiet vigilance. Kai hadn't raised his voice. He hadn't called for help. But somehow, the community was already responding. That was the new difference. Kai wasn't alone this time. Rex saw it too. His hand hovered behind his jacket for a beat longer, then dropped. No blade, no strike, just a breath, and a long, hateful stare. "You win this round," he growled, "but don't think this makes you untouchable." Kai didn't smile, he didn't blink, he simply said, "You already touched the wrong line, and I'm still standing." Rex turned sharply, got on his bike, revved the engine like a wounded animal, and peeled off into the street without another word. When Kai turned back toward the house, Maria was on the porch, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "He brought a weapon," she said. "He didn't use it," Kai replied. "Because you didn't let him," she added. "You gave him a choice, and that's what power really is." Eli burst out the door, running to Kai and hugging him tightly. "I was scared," he said, voice muffled in Kai's chest. "Me too," Kai whispered back. "But we stayed true. That's what matters." That evening, Kai sat in the living room, not with a book, but with a laptop. A blank document stared back at him, the speech he'd been asked to give. For the first time he knew what to write, not about fighting, not about how to win, but how to choose. How to recognize that real strength isn't in how hard you hit, but how deeply you stand when someone's trying to knock you off center. He wrote about the park, about Eli, about Rex, but more importantly, about the moment when everything could have turned violent, but didn't. He called it the power of walking away. When he finished, he closed the laptop, leaned back, and looked out the window. The street was calm again. The world had moved on, but something inside him had settled. Not like a victory, but like a truth found and held on to. And in that quiet, steady moment, Kai Walker finally understood the legacy he was building not through fame or fists or fear, but through the unshakable conviction that peace held with strength could change everything. What did this story make you feel? Inspired? Empowered? Maybe a little shaken? Drop your thoughts in the comments, we read every one. And hey, if you want more stories like this, ones that hit deep and stay with you, don't forget to subscribe. We're just getting started.